He didn't lose, he won. I killed that one, too.
Jack bet he never
He didn't win, he lost.
Is that it?
That's it.
It's bad both ways.
Walter Matthau and George Burns, in an interview from 1975, they were brought together for the film The Sunshine Boys, in which they played a showbiz double act reunited for a valedictory performance. It was inspired casting. Matthau reasserted his claim to be Hollywood's best character actor. Burns, after being ignored by Hollywood for more than 30 years, making a triumphant return to the screen. Aged 79, he won an Oscar, was a bigger star than he'd ever been before. He died 2 years ago, having lived to be 100. Now, if ever an interview illustrated the fact that doing a talk show is better than working, it was this, a reminder of two talented and funny men having a very good time.
Movie acting is supposed to be something in which you're hiding from the audience. You're saying, I'm talking to you. Now, if they heard me, it's no good.
I didn't hear you, never mind about that. But I take your point. It's an intimate insight, isn't
That's right.
it? More than
And you're not supposed to perform for the audience. I remember on the stage in The Odd Couple, I didn't get a laugh early on in the play. And so, in a very peevish mood, I turned my back to the audience and said all the lines as rapidly as I could. I got letters from people that said it was the finest comedy performance they had ever seen.
Do you feel unhappy about being an actor who somehow is excluded from doing the classical Shakespearean roles that they do because of accent?
Yes.
You do?
Very much so. I'm very unhappy about it, because I think I would have made a good classical actor. But since I speak with an accent, I'm at a terrific disadvantage. Terrific. I mean, I remember a fellow in school, there's a fellow out there, Gordon Stern, who's an actor, went to the dramatic workshop with me, and we were just talking about a fellow called Dan Matthews. Now, Dan Matthews was a very handsome, brilliantly statured man who got all the leads. But he spoke with a heavy Midwestern accent. And so when he was doing Shakespeare, for example, he'd say, "Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble, and by opposing in them to die, to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, who knows what dreams may come when we..." And the director was a German by the name of Urban Piscator. He says, "Well, this is magnificent. This boy speaks great. His English is fantastic." But I did play English. Am I speaking too much?
No, indeed not. So we'll answer one or two more questions. I'll get about another two in about the next 15 minutes. You, in fact, came from an unlikely
Can you lend me £5?
No. Why?
I need it. I have to eat later.
So the money you're making, you must be worth a fortune now.
I have about £35, £40. I have a heavy obligation to a lot of relatives.
You do?
Yes, there's about 15 in the audience.
You find the sort of more...
And 12 bookmakers.
All part of the family. I thought you'd given up the gambling, actually.
I have. I really have. Yeah.
What was the most you ever lost?
It's too exciting. About $40,000 in one night. $40,000. That's a shame. When I think of the people that could really eat and live on that kind of money, it's just, it's too guilt-producing. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm ashamed of it. And I don't want you ever to mention it again.
You came, as I said, from an unlikely background, didn't you? From the, what was it, Lower East Side in New York,
Yes.
didn't you? How rough was it, the background you came from?
It wasn't too bad. We had potato soup about twice a week. The rest of the time, it was weak tea and some bread, some beans. My mother was a very poor cook. She cooked everything on top of the stove, on the gas range. So we had steamed meatloaf. You know, and boiled chicken. My mother would boil a chicken for 3 or 4 days. And she'd tell me that the chicken really didn't count. It was the soup that counted. And,
Was it a rough neighborhood?
oh, yes.
Gang warfare and this sort of thing?
Yes, but it was clean. As far as I remember, it was clean. Nobody had knives, nobody had guns. There were no clubs. Everything was with the fists. That's why a lot of good fighters came out of the Lower East Side.
How did you, in fact, you manage then from that, I assume, coming from where you did, that you'd no idea that one day you'd be an actor. I mean, surely that wasn't an ambition that you could entertain coming from where you came from.
It wasn't consciously. I think there was something that germ genetically was there. Yeah. And then I used to listen to speech. I was always entranced, bewitched by speech, especially good English speech. I remember when I was here, I was 8 months here at Old Buckingham, the 453rd Bomber Squadron. I went to Bovingdon, I went to Link Trainer School, and then I used to listen to the BBC. And I still remember Peter Watson. And he'd say, "This is Peter Watson of the BBC. We now bring you the news at dictation speed. The Allies, A, able, L, love, I, item, E, easy, S, sugar, have captured Anzio. A, able, N, net, I, item, O, able." And it was beautiful. It sounded like heavenly music to me.
Yes.
It was magnificent. And I listened to Peter Watson as much as I could. And on the Lower East Side, I listened to David Ross and to Milton Cross. Milton Cross did the opera. And he had a slight tinge of a New York Hell's Kitchen accent, but very florid speech. So that he would say something like, "And the great Carlo Menotti and Lucrezia Gallicurci come before the golden curtain." And I love that kind of speech, and I think I try to imitate it. And I didn't speak like the kids around the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, my brother was constantly asked, "Hey, why does your brother talk so funny like that?" "Your brother, he talks like he's like from out of town or something." "What is it? What's the matter? He's ashamed to be like one of us?" And my brother would say, "Nah, he's all right. He's a good kid. He reads Shakespeare in the toilet a lot." So that was the problem.
One other thing I've noticed about you, too, in your acting, is the way that you use a walk as part of your characterization. And I remember once reading an interview with Sir Alec Guinness, who said that he couldn't get a part right until he got the walk right. Would I be right in assuming that you work something in a similar fashion?
Very important, and very few actors use it. I remember a part I did, and I asked the director, a very fine director named Harold Klorman. He's also a critic. I asked him what he wanted in the role. He said, "Well, you're playing a very rich man. He's a billionaire. He's French. And so just walk fancy and talk English." So I thought that talking English would be easy. I'd simply do an exaggerated British accent, and it would sound as though I were translating from the French. You know, such as, "I always take an instant dislike to anyone taller than I am, with the possible exception of Charles de Gaulle." And the walk, he said, "Walk fancy." So I thought of a walk that perhaps a man who was so rich that he really didn't have to walk. And so they carried him until he was 38. From one car to another and one school to another. And so I thought of the walk that my mother used when she had to go to the bathroom very badly. And she could barely contain it. And she had gotten out of the subway where we had spent a day on the beach at Coney Island, and she could barely make it to the house, to the flat, and so
You sure?
she would sort of, you know, but with this, he was very aristocratic, so I sort of used this little thing, and it looks a little bit superimposed now, but I perfected it to where it looked natural.
Yes.
I know it looks terrible now, but when you work it into a character and you forget about it, it seems to work, but you must have the guts to keep it up.
Yes.
You must have the nerve to stay with it,
Yes.
not to fall off.
Yes.
And say, oh my God, I'm doing badly,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. You in fact, in the latest film, The Sunshine Boys, you play an old man. You play this old music hall comedian. And again, you've got an entirely different walk for that man. Rather than you demonstrate it, let's have a look, in fact, because we've got a clip here of the sequence. It's the story of the breakup of two comedians, old comedians who come back, make a comeback. And this is where he comes to your house for the first reunion for rehearsal.
I'm bringing a lawyer with me. From where? From New Jersey? You're lucky if a cow comes in with you. Against you in court, I could win with a cow. The finger? You're starting with the finger again? Are you crazy? Next time you give me the finger, say goodbye to the finger. I'm crazy. I'm crazy. I'm crazy? Keep saying it until you believe it. Get away! Get away from that phone! Lunatic. Hello? Is that my daughter? Will you shut up? Is that my daughter? Will you keep quiet? Can't you see I'm talking? Don't you see me on the phone with a person? For God's sakes, will you behave like a human being for 5 seconds? For 5 seconds, behave like a human being! Hello? Just a minute. It's your daughter.
See what comes through in that film, actually, it happens all too rarely in movies, the sense that you enjoyed doing it. Would that be a fair assessment?
Very much so.
Yes.
I thought the whole experience was totally delightful, totally delightful.
Hmm.
The man I was working with, of course, is a legend, and it was just a beautiful experience. It was warm, it was interesting, it was exciting. And you know, I got tired watching that scene. I mean, I remember the day we did it. I think I broke 2 ribs jumping over that chair. We did about 15, 20 takes. I don't know how George Burns did it.
Well, I tell you what, let's ask him. Ladies and gentlemen, George Burns. That was some reception.
Nice. Let me get this cigar into this holder.
Did you feel
That's
naked?
it. At my age, this is exciting.
Did you feel naked? Did you feel naked without your cigar in the movie? Because in the movie, I mean, in fact, Walter, you smoked, didn't you? And
I didn't. They wouldn't let me smoke. I was a character.
Did you, in fact, find it as pleasant as Walter did doing the movie?
Well, it was the greatest experience of my life. I've never done a movie like that. I've never played a character before. And the last movie I made for MGM was 36 years ago. And they must have liked me because they brought me back. And the movie is a real good movie. And you had to be good in the movie because you're alongside of Walter, who's a great actor. And imagine doing a script by Neil Simon and getting money to do it. You've got these wonderful words that fit your mouth, and it's very easy to act anyway. knock on the door and somebody says, come in, and if you walk in, you're a great actor. If you stay out in the hall, you're an idiot. So I went inside. I'm an actor. Told me to sit down, and I did.
Is that the
Told me
difference?
to stand up, and I did.
How much of a relationship built up in the making of the movie? How much did you play off each other? I mean, I'd live with each other and this sort of thing. At all?
Well, he did something to me. You want to tell it? We're doing a scene, and in the middle of the scene, for no rhyme or reason, there was a plate full of nuts on the table. And don't forget, this is my first picture as a character actor. First time my name wasn't George Burns, it was Al Lewis. And we're doing the scene, we're going along fine. And all of a sudden he says, would you like some nuts? And I knew it wasn't in the scene, but I figured I have to answer him. I said, I don't like nuts, there's too much salt in it. And we continued doing the scene. And when I came off stage, he says, George, you're a good actor, you listen.
You worked up a little comedy act between yourselves, you know, the sort of, you know...
Oh, no, we didn't have to, but he knows there are standard jokes. He knows all of them. If I give him a line, for example, he'll answer it correctly. Let me see, I'll make up a line.
Is there one missing?
Wait a minute. That's very good. I was going to... Let's try it. That's very good.
Oh, dear.
Let's try it again. Did you take a bath today?
Is there one missing?
That's it.
That's it. That's the line.
Now, do you know Lincoln's Gettysburg Address?
I don't even know where I live.
That's not bad. The actual line is, I didn't know he moved.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something.
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
Yes?
do you know you're reading that script upside down? You say, think it's easy?
Think it's easy?
Very good.
Good. There's something wrong with my delivery, would you say?
No, you had it. You didn't know the line.
That's good.
If
Absolutely.
you knew the line, it would have
Those are two
been a big
jokes.
laugh.
Those are... I'll tell you one story that's kind of funny. We're playing New Orleans, and Gracie sent a dress out to be cleaned. And she paid $400 for the dress, which was a lot of money because we were only getting $400 as a team. Now, out of the $200 that she got, she paid 10% commission. She paid her railroad fares, her hotel bills. So $400 for a dress was a lot of money. And she sent it to the cleaners, and they ruined the dress. And she wanted the $400, and they wouldn't give her $400. They said they'd give her $50. Well, anyway, one joke was, I said to Gracie, a funny thing happened to my mother in Cleveland. And she says, I thought you were born in Buffalo. That was... So I said to the muser, I said, stop. And I said, a funny thing happened to my mother in Cleveland. And Gracie walked down to the footlights, and she says, ladies and gentlemen, she says, don't send your clothes to the chiffon cleaners. I just sent them my dress, a $400 dress, and they ruined it. And she says, the reason I'm telling you this is that I'm leaving New Orleans, and you people have to stay here. So take my advice, and don't ever send those people anything to clean, because they're not capable, they're not nice, she says, and they're bad people to work with. And then she came back and she said, I thought you were born in Buffalo.
You were, of course, I mean, you're the straight man in that relationship, weren't you?
Well, it was very easy to do straight for Gracie because I had to do nothing. I said to Gracie, how's your brother? And she talked for 38 years.
How young, in fact, were you, George, when you first started in show business?
I was 7 years old. I sang with 4 kids, the Pee Wee Quartet. And we sang and passed the hat around and sang on ferry boats and saloons and in yards and amateur nights. And on the Staten Island ferry boats, if they didn't like you, they'd throw you off the boat, fall in the water. I was able to sing with a mouthful of water. And then I did all kinds of acts. I did a skating act. I did a ballroom dancing act. I did worked with a seal. I worked with a dog.
What was a seal? How do you work with a seal?
Well, the seal wasn't really my act. I was living in a little boarding house on 45th Street, and this man was living there. His name was Captain Betts, he called himself. Captain Betts and Flipper. He worked with the Seal. And he was booked into the theater, the Dewey Theater on 14th Street. And he got sick, and they asked me to take his place. And I told him, don't be silly. I says, Betts, I've never worked with the Seal. I wouldn't know what to do. He says, you don't have to worry about it. The Seal does the whole thing. He says, the curtain goes up, and the Seal is on a little platform, and you're standing there with a ball in your hand and your pockets full of fish. And you just throw the ball to the Seal, and the Seal flips the ball, he bounces the ball, he juggles it and throws it back to you, and you throw him a piece of fish, and he applauds with his flippers. Now, he does about 3 more tricks, and every time you throw him at the end of the trick, you throw him a piece of fish, and he applauds. And at the finish of the act, there's a rack of horns, and he goes in back of the horns, and he blows into the horns, and he plays Yankee Doodle. He says, at the finish of Yankee Doodle, he presses a lever, and 2 American flags come up, and you throw him a piece of fish, and as he's applauding with his flippers, you're taking bows, and the curtain comes down. And I opened at the Dewey Theater and got away with it. But that night, I had a date with a very pretty girl who was also in show business. And I was afraid to meet her. I was ashamed to meet her because when you do 4 shows a day with your pockets full of fish, you don't smell too good. But I met her, and she never noticed it because she was doing an act with Fink's Mules. In fact, she complimented me on my aftershave lotion.
I don't believe a word of that story.
Well, it's true. Would I know a name like Captain Betts? It wasn't true.
How long did that last?
I smelled about a year. After that, I couldn't get rid of that fishy smell.
What other kind of similar sort of silly acts did you do?
Well, I did a skating act with a fella. We called the act Brown and Williams, singers, dancers, and roller skaters. Anyway, we did this act, Brown and Williams, and we split the act up. And I went to work with another fellow, and he went to work with somebody else. And so now you had Brown and Williams and Brown doing the same act. And then we all split up again, and we always did the same act. And you had Brown and Williams and Brown, Brown and Brown, and Williams and Williams. Then you had Brown and Williams and Brown, Brown and Brown, Williams and Williams, the Brown brothers and the Williams boys. And we had one fella in the neighborhood, his name was Jaime Goldberg. And he moved, he was afraid to live in a Gentile neighborhood.
How competitive was it in those days when you were touring around with your acts? I mean, was there much pinching of material and this sort of thing?
No. Because well, if you're talking about small-time vaudeville, I was a small-time vaudevillian until I was about 27. I played nothing but very bad theaters, but I was very lucky because I was bad too. And you were very fortunate in those days because there were places that you could be bad in. But then when you played good vaudeville, you would take your act and you'd register your act with the Pat Casey office. And if anybody stole a joke, you'd write to Pat Casey, and he'd look at the act, and he'd look at your act, and he'd say the joke belongs to so-and-so. Funny story about a joke. I'll show you how important a joke was. We were playing the Palace Theater, and we were doing a joke about Hepplewhite or something. Gracie's brother went out hunting, and he took out 4 dogs, and then the next day took out 4 more dogs. And then I says, well, what did he do with the dogs that he took out the day before? Gracie says he shot them. I says, he shoots dogs? She says, he aims for the birds, but it's a bad shot. Well, anyway, so Joe Frisco, it was a very good act. He gave us a joke, and the joke was, this is a very old joke now, but I'm going back about 45, 50 years. And the joke is the Hepplewhite is a bird that flies backwards because it's not interested in where it's going, it's interested in where it's been. That was the joke. And that was a very, very big joke for us. It was a very big laugh. And we got a phone call from Fred Allen saying that joke was registered with the Pat Casey office. That was his joke. And by that time, we couldn't take that joke out because the whole routine would go right out in the street. I offered him $400 for that one joke. That's how important that joke was, and he wouldn't sell it. So I called up John P. Medbury, who was a great writer in California. He used to write for us a little bit. And I told him my problem. I says, this bird flies backwards. It's not interested in where it's going. It's interested in where it's been. And Medbury, without even waiting a second, said, George, have the bird fly upside down. In case a hunter shoots it, he falls up.
Something else I'd like to ask both of you, actually, is the fact that you both, in fact, came from the same kind of background, didn't you? Because you're from the same neighborhood as,
I don't know.
as Walter.
Did you come from the Lower East Side?
Yes.
Did you? What street?
I was a little higher up, not socially or economically, but higher up geographically. I was on 1st Street between 1st and 10th, bordering Avenue A and 2nd Avenue.
Well, that was high class.
That was high class.
I was way down. You had steak once a month. We had sauce and chipped wood. We had nothing. My mother used to have a pot on the stove. Whatever we brought home, she'd throw in the pot.
We once killed a rat and cooked it.
Really?
Yeah.
Barbecued rat is delicious.
Really? Is that
Yeah.
true? How many were you from a big family?
Two boys and my mother.
Well, then you had a lot of rat. 2 people. We had to divide the rat between 12. Very small piece of rat.
Well, it is extraordinary to think of the two of you coming from, I mean, becoming what you are from that extraordinary background.
You ever have braised rat?
Never.
Terrible.
Sounds delicious.
The basic premise of the movie, of course, is that the double act who got there and performed for 43 years and 11,000 performances don't, in fact, get on well backstage. In your experience, is that true to life? That double acts don't get on with each other off the stage?
Well, that wasn't true with Gracie and myself.
No.
Because we were a double act, too. I imagine that would be true with acts where the talent was divided evenly. And one would get a good notice and one would get a bad notice, and they'd have some arguments. But I never had that problem with Gracie, because I never got a good notice. I knew what to do off the stage, but I couldn't do it on.
Yeah.
And I thought of it, and Gracie was able to do it. Then when Gracie retired, I went into show business, because I was retired while I worked with Gracie.
It probably then the message is that you have a better relationship with your partner on stage if you sort of sleep with her off stage.
True.
Yeah.
Not only slept with Gracie, I ate with Gracie, I worked with Gracie. I was with Gracie for 38 years.
Yes.
We got along just great. Because we were not, Gracie didn't marry me because I was a great lover. She married me for laughs. I got more laughs in bed with Gracie than I did when I played Lost Cause.
When I had the late Jack Benny on my program, he talked very affectionately about your relationship. You were very close, weren't you,
Yeah,
Benny?
yeah,
Yeah.
great man.
Yeah.
And we were friends for 55 years, and we were very close. And I always loved to make Jack Benny laugh because I loved to hear him laugh, and he was a delight when he laughed. When Jack Benny didn't laugh, he used to collapse. When Jack Benny laughed in a restaurant, the whole restaurant laughed. And he was very easy to make laugh, providing you didn't tell him any jokes. It was little things that made him laugh, little nothings. Like, well, we'd sit down at the table. I said, Jack, would you like some salt? No, that's not funny here, is it? Big laugh from Jack Benny. And I didn't have to make him laugh. He made himself laugh. I'd sit with him, and all of a sudden he'd look at me and laugh. I'd say, Jack, what are you laughing at? I'm not doing anything funny. He says, yeah, but you're not doing it on purpose. There I was a big comedian again. I walked into the lobby into the Hillcrest Country Club, and I got a very bad memory. So this man passed, and he says, hello, George. And I says, hello, kid. I call everybody kid, and he came over to me. He says, you and I have been members of the same club now for 35 years, and you keep calling me kid. You don't remember my name, do you? I says, I don't, huh? I said, Jack, tell him his name. That was the end of Jack Benny.
How do you rate him, George, as a performer, as a comedian?
A quiet riot. He was absolutely marvelous. He did something in Vegas that I was there when it happened. This was the opening of his act. He came out on the stage, and he stood there. He never said a word. He just looked at the audience. And he kept looking. And then he folded his arms. And he kept looking. And he touched his face. And they laughed. And then at the finish, he says, "What the hell are you laughing at?"
It's a very good question.
Very few people can do that.
Did you ever see the thing that Benny did on television? His screen personality was very stingy. And one day a man came out and said, took out a gun and said, "Your money or your life?" And he turned to the audience. And he stood there for about 5 minutes. And it was nothing but laughter.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nothing but laughter.
And then the man said, "Your money?" He says, "I'm thinking."
I knew there was another.
Yeah, there was another. And he didn't do it.
See, I'm not a comedian.
Wait a minute. As long as... And he didn't do it on television.
Oh.
He did it on radio,
On radio,
which is even funnier.
That's
Because that 5-minute pause on radio was frightening. See, on television, you could at least see him. But on radio, you just, this long pause. So when you tell it again, please tell it right.
No wonder I didn't get any laughs.
Yeah, he was
It's like the guy says about Jones. He says, you know, Jones lost $100,000 in lumber last year. The other guy says, Jones exaggerates. Wasn't lumber, it was toothpicks. Wasn't 100,000, it was 18,000. He didn't lose, he won. I killed that one, too.
Jack Benny never
He
told
didn't
that.
win, he lost.
Is that it?
That's it.
It's bad both ways.
You know, it's a good thing. It's a good
You
thing.
should do a night together.
It's a good thing I don't have to make a living telling jokes.
He'd be absolutely marvelous.
I cannot tell a joke.
He'd be a great.
I've screwed up every joke I've ever tried to tell.
Well, because you're doing it ad lib. But if you knew the words. If you had, I'll bet you, I can give you a monologue, and if you rehearsed it, you walked out there, you'd be a riot.
If I got 6 weeks rehearsal
No.
and 12 weeks on the road,
Well, how did you remember everything in the play? You stuck to every line.
well, I rehearsed it for 6 weeks and took it out on the road for 12 weeks.
I'm talking about the Sunshine Boys. That didn't go on the
I
road.
studied it for a year before I got that job. A year.
Well, then I'll give you a monologue. You'll study for 6 months and you'll do it.
I'll say the wrong lines.
No, you won't. No.
I need more than 6 months.
Because I think any great actor would be a great comedian because you believe it.
But isn't there something, though, it's something that separates the actor, no matter how great, from the comedian, and that's the delivery, the timing? Isn't there something in essence of the delivery of a line which makes it funny?
I think timing is a fallacy. I mean,
think so?
everybody says timing. What is timing? Timing is if you've got bad ears, it's bad timing. The timing is this. You tell a joke, and if they laugh, you don't say anything. And when they're through laughing, you talk again. That's timing. Now, if you're going to talk while they're laughing, it's bad timing.
He doesn't know about timing.
What do
He
I
doesn't
know?
know how to explain timing.
No.
He simply is a master at it.
That's
No.
right. Absolutely.
Like when I came in and I did the Sunshine Boys. I read the script, and the words seemed that that's the way I should read it, and that's the way I read it.
Yes. One thing that we didn't hear you do in Sunshine Boys is sing. And that's been part of your act for a long, long time.
I love to sing.
You do love to
crazy
sing.
about singing, and the thing that the audience don't like my singing, but I like it. I like it. I don't care whether they like it or not. I love to sing, and I always sing. And I'm not like Tony Bennett or Sinatra. You know, they need a finish, because when they exit, they need applause for the audience to bring them back. But I don't exit.
We don't. Can you sing as well, Walter?
Yes.
Can he?
Yes, he can. He can
Can he?
sing.
What does he sing?
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Sing that, Walter.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Oh, how I'd love to remain in bed. For the hardest blow of all is to hear the bugler call. You gotta get up, you gotta get up, you gotta get up this morning. Someday I'm going to murder the bugler. Someday you're going to find him dead. I'll amputate his reveille and step upon it heavily and spend the rest of my life in bed.
As I said, you're 80 next week, aren't you?
Yeah, well, not next week. The 20th of January, I'll be 79 again. I'm going to stay at 79.
You are?
Yeah.
You don't entertain any thoughts of retiring?
No.
Nope.
No, never retire.
Really?
You don't retire, you collapse. Who wants to retire? What other business can a man my age walk out on the stage and smoke a cigar and tell a few jokes and sing a few songs and use the same color lipstick that Dolores Del Rio uses?
Dolores Del Rio.
Retire? That would be silly.
Which do you like best about wearing the lipstick?
I'd like her, too. She's nice.
Yeah.
Pretty girl. I wouldn't know what to do with her. But...
And what about you, Walter? What are you doing next?
I don't have anything.
No?
No,
I find that hard to believe.
that's true. I don't have anything yet. I'm reading stuff. Waiting to see something good.
Yeah. And then?
Well, if I see something good and somebody wants to invest some money in me doing it, I'll do it.
I should think that you're fighting them off.
If you see something bad,
Not really.
If you see something bad that you don't want to do, throw it my way. I'll take anything.
Walter Matthau is still working, still making movies. George Burns, as I said, died in 1996, a few months after celebrating his 100th birthday. In the last 20 years of his life, and mainly because of the Sunshine Boys, he became a national institution. And just before he died, he was asked by an interviewer why he thought he'd been successful. He said it was because he loved show business. After all, he explained, what other job could I do that made people laugh and gave me the chance to wear the same lipstick as Madonna? Good night.
A pretty girl was jilted by her husband. He left her and he went his merry way. With tearful eyes, she wrote a sad letter. And here is what the lady had to say. I'm returning every present that you gave me. I'm sending back each letter that you wrote. Every sweet memento that we cherished. The locket that I wore around my throat. Enclosed you'll find the mortgage on the house, dear. That unfair you must admit is true. I'm returning everything except the baby. That's the one thing that I didn't get from you, isn't it? One more song, a cute song. I guess I'll take the train back home. There's no more sights here left for me to see. I've wined and dined and gazed on bill of fares till mother's homemade pies look good to me. San Francisco is a grand old place. When I get back, I'll never, never roam. Tell those cable cars to wait and open up that Golden Gate. I'm gonna take the train back home to San Francisco. I'm gonna take the train back home to Powland Market to see the ferry building, to wave to Oakland, to eat at Fisherman's Wharf, to visit Sausalito. Took me so long to finish the song. I just missed the train back home.
Well, we're sorry about the slight sound problems near the beginning of that programme, and we hope they didn't spoil your enjoyment too much. Parkinson will be back with a new series early next year.